You know, have you ever stopped to think about how we really learn things? It's not always in a classroom, right? Or from a book. There's this unspoken curriculum that's all around us, a kind of silent teacher that's been shaping who we are since day one. So let's dive into this powerful idea together.
Wow, that's a heavy thought, isn't it? But it's not just some pretty poetic line. It is a fundamental truth about how we develop. We're basically like sponges, especially when we're little. Our environment literally imprints itself onto our nervous systems, onto our beliefs, onto our entire way of being in the world.
Okay, so how does this whole thing actually work? It's not like someone sits you down for a lecture. Nope, it's way more subtle than that. This unspoken curriculum gets absorbed through all these channels we barely even notice are there. And if you look at this list, what do you notice? None of this is active teaching, right? It's all passive. A kid learns from the vibe of a house. Is it super tense all the time, or is it pretty calm? They learn from the repetition of things, the emotional tone of a conversation, and, this is the big one, from the consistency of what's shown to them. That example, that just becomes their normal. And this is the really critical takeaway. There's no off switch. There's no neutral ground. A child is always learning. Every single moment, every interaction, heck, even the silences are teaching something. And these lessons, they build the foundation of a life, sending us down one of two very, very different roads.
All right, so let's walk down that first path, the one carved out by a tough environment. When your world feels unsafe as a kid, the lessons you learn are all about one thing: survival. And that survival is built on fear, on doubt, and on always being on guard.
This is that first echo of fear we're talking about. When a kid's world is just filled with criticism, they don't just learn to be careful. No, they actually absorb that critical voice. It sets up shop inside their own head and becomes the narrator for the rest of their life. And the price you pay for that? It's huge. Curiosity, that little engine that drives all learning, it just sputters and dies. Trying new things feels way too risky. Suddenly, your self-worth is all tangled up with how well you perform, and every little mistake feels like the end of the world. Because that voice inside, it's a harsh, harsh judge. Okay, so the next lesson kind of builds on top of that. A hostile world teaches you deep in your bones that life is a fight. Your main goal isn't to connect with people or build cool things. Nope, it's just to defend yourself. What that does is it puts your nervous system on high alert, 24/7. And you know what's wild? Eventually, peace itself starts to feel weird, unsettling, because you're just wired to wait for the other shoe to drop. Trust gets really hard. Empathy kind of goes out the window. And relationships, they become a game of chess, not a real connection. And then there's ridicule. What does that teach? Oh man, it teaches maybe one of the toughest lessons there is. Being seen, really seen, is dangerous. It teaches you that if you show people who you really are, you're just going to get laughed at. It's going to hurt. So what do? The only logical thing, really, you shrink, you get quiet, you hide. Silence becomes your superpower, your shield. Being your authentic self, that feels like a massive liability. And so much potential just stays locked up inside because the risk of letting it out feels absolutely terrifying. But, and this is a big but, there is another way, a totally different curriculum. This is the one taught in a world of security and support. And this path, this one builds a foundation of confidence, trust, and resilience. Just look at the contrast here. It's so powerful. Criticism teaches you to condemn. Encouragement teaches you confidence. And we're not talking about just ignoring mistakes here. It's about shifting the focus to the effort, to the simple idea that growth is always possible. And just look at what happens. Curiosity doesn't just survive, it thrives. Your motivation isn't about dodging trouble anymore. It comes from inside you. Failure stops being this scary monster and turns into, well, just data. It's information. An environment like this is like giving a child's potential all the oxygen it needs to just expand. All right, next up is praise. And it's easy to think praise is just about, fluffing someone's ego. But it's so much more than that. It's a really powerful tool that teaches a kid how to see and appreciate value, not just in themselves, but in other people too. When a kid's effort is genuinely seen and pointed out, it's like it reinforces their strengths. Their sense of who they are gets more stable. They learn, hey, what I do actually matters. And that grows into a genuine gratitude for the world. And finally, we get to what might be the most important one of all, security. A safe, predictable world, that's the bedrock. That's the foundation for everything else. It teaches a kid to have faith, and I don't mean that in a religious way. I mean a deep, gut-level trust that the world is an okay place to be and that they belong in it. A secure world calms the nervous system down. It lets a kid actually rest on the inside. When you're not burning all your fuel just scanning for threats, you've got all this leftover energy to explore, to connect with people, to trust, to take good risks. Peace becomes your new normal, your baseline. So why does all of this matter so much? What's the big deal? Well, it's because these lessons we learn as kids, they don't just fade away. They echo through our entire adult lives. And eventually they kind of harden and become the blueprint for our personality. Let's just trace how that happens step by step. First, to get by, a kid adapts to whatever world they're in. You do those adaptations over and over, and they become automatic habits. Then, over a few years, that whole bundle of habits sort of solidifies, and we call it a personality. And here's the kicker. If you never stop to look at it, that personality pretty much sets your life's path. It becomes your destiny in a way. Now, I know that can sound a little bleak, like we're all just doomed by our past. But that is absolutely not the end of the story. The entire reason to understand this stuff is so we can take back the steering wheel. And the key that starts the engine? It's awareness. And this part is so important. The point of all this is not to play the blame game, not to blame our parents, not to blame ourselves. This isn't about accusation. It's about illumination. It's literally just about flipping on the lights in a dark room so we can finally see the old wiring for what it is. And once the lights are on, everything can change. That stuff we inherited without even knowing, we can meet it with conscious awareness. That feeling of helplessness, we can swap it out for the power of choice. And the old damage, we can start to heal it with some real compassion for ourselves. We can actually interrupt that lifelong echo. So we want to leave you with a question to chew on. Just take a second and look around you. I mean, your home, your job, the people you're with, and maybe most importantly, the environment inside your own head. What is it teaching you right now in this moment? And maybe the bigger question is, what curriculum are you going to choose to create for yourself and for the people around you starting today?